So friends, now we are going to begin with complex analysis. What exactly are complex numbers? Complex numbers are numbers like z, which can be written in the form x plus I y, where this x is the real part, which is also written as real of z. Y is the imaginary part, which is also written as imaginary of z. This I is iota, which is root of minus 1, iota, root of minus 1. Now 0 is both a real number as well as an imaginary number. Thus either part in the complex number can be 0. Now the big question that most of us have is that why and where do we use complex numbers? We know real numbers. What about imaginary numbers? Do they even exist? Well, the answer is yes, they do exist in the real world. Probably in the beginning, when root of negative numbers were discovered, people imagined that we had something like a number line in which we had numbers which were root of negative numbers, just like a real number line. Thus they were given the name as imaginary number. Later on, as we progressed, these numbers do come up in engineering, electronics, physics, etc. But the name got stuck as imaginary number. They are used comparatively less as compared to the real numbers. Additionally, complex numbers are used to simplify problems. We usually begin with a real quantity, we end up at a real quantity, but to solve this we use complex numbers, because complex numbers help us to simplify our problems, without which solving problems becomes quite tedious. And how do we represent these complex numbers geometrically? We use a diagram called as Argand diagram, which is nothing but where the x-axis is the real axis and y-axis is the imaginary axis. So any point in this plane will be a complex number. Now this is the Cartesian form of the complex number. So in the polar form, these numbers can be written as z is equal to r e raised to I theta, where this r is the modulus of z, which is also written as mod of z. This theta is the argument of z, which is written as argument of z. Now how do we link this Cartesian form and this polar form? That is as that is linked as x is equal to r cos theta and y equals to r sin theta. R is equal to, that is the modulus of z is equal to x squared plus y squared, and the argument of z theta is equal to tan inverse y by x. Now some properties of modulus and argument are, if you are having two complex numbers z1 and z2, then the modulus of z1 plus z2 is always less than or equal to modulus of z1 plus modulus of z2. The modulus of z1 minus z2 is always greater than or equal to modulus of z1 minus modulus of z2. Modulus of z1 into z2 is equal to modulus of z1 into modulus of z2. The modulus of z1 upon z2 is equal to modulus of z1 upon modulus of z2. Also, the arguments can be written as argument of z1 z2 is equal to argument of z1 plus argument of z2. Argument of z1 upon z2 is equal to argument of z1 minus argument of z2. Distance between two points. Let's say we are having 2 points z1 and z2 in the complex plane or the Argand plane. We are having 2 points. Let's call this z1, z2 with coordinates x1, y1 and coordinates x2, y2. Then the distance between these 2 points d is equal to root of x2 minus x1 the whole squared plus y2 minus y1 the whole squared, where this can also be written as modulus of z2 minus z1. This is the complex number z. Its complex conjugate is written as z bar or z star. And in complex conjugate, what do? We replace I by minus I and minus I by I. So if z is x plus iy, then z bar or z star, its complex conjugate will be x minus iy, plus I will change to minus I. What is the de Moivre's theorem? It states that if we are having cos theta plus I sin theta the whole raised to n, that is multiply this number by itself, multiply this quantity by itself n times, you will get cos n theta plus I sin n theta. The Euler's formula is e raised to I theta is written as cos theta plus I sin theta. So this can be then written as e raised to I theta the whole raised to n. Now based on the values of theta, we are having e raised to I 2n pi is always 1. E raised to I 2n plus 1 pi is equal to minus 1. E raised to I 4n plus 1 pi by 2 is equal to I. E raised to I 4n plus 3 pi by 2 is equal to minus I, where this n, where this n can be either a negative or a positive integer. And a modulus of e raised to I theta is always equal to 1 irrespective of the value of theta. Circular functions are cos theta is equal to e raised to I theta plus e raised to minus I theta divided by 2, and sin theta is equal to e raised to I theta minus e raised to minus I theta divided by 2i. The hyperbolic functions are cos h theta is equal to e raised to theta plus e raised to minus theta divided by 2, and sin h theta is equal to e raised to theta minus e raised to minus theta divided by 2. Now the relation between this circular function and the hyperbolic function is cos I theta is equal to cos h theta, and sin I theta is equal to I sin h theta. If we are having the equation of the form z cube is equal to 1, then we know that there will be 3 solutions of this equation. Let's call them 1, omega and omega squared. Now these 3 solutions are such that 1 plus omega squared is equal to 0, 1 into omega squared is equal to 1, and omega raised to 3n is always equal to 1. Now what are the values of omega and omega squared? 2 omega is equal to root 3i minus 1, and minus 2 omega squared is equal to root 3i plus 1. You can take the equation and find the values on your own. Find the values of 1 omega and omega squared on your own. A function of a complex variable is nothing but f of z. That means it is equal to u of xy plus I v of xy in Cartesian form, where u is the real, u of xy is the real part and this is the imaginary part. In polar form, this can be written as u of r theta plus I v of r theta, where again this is the real part and this is the imaginary part. So now if f of z is equal to z squared, that means x plus I y the whole squared, then the real part becomes x squared minus y squared and the imaginary part is 2xy. If f of z is equal to I z square, that means I x plus I y the whole squared, then the imaginary part or the real part becomes minus 2xy and the imaginary part becomes x squared minus y squared. If f of z is equal to z cube, that is x plus I y the whole cube, then the real part is x cube minus 3xy squared and the imaginary part is 3x squared y minus y cube. You can also prove these on your own. We all know that if x is a real quantity, that is if x belongs to the set of real numbers R, then the range of sine x is from -1 to 1 and the range of cos x is also from -1 to 1. But if we are having z, which is a complex number, or we can say that z belongs to the set of complex numbers, then the range of sine z belongs to the set of complex numbers and the range of cos z also belongs to the set of complex numbers. Now we will look into the limit, continuity and differentiability of complex functions. So we'll begin with limit. Limit can be written as limit z tends to z naught f of z is equal to, let's say, some value omega, or you can call this just w. What does this mean? This means that as the input z approaches z naught, the function f of z approaches the limiting value w. So in limits, instead of studying the function at a particular point, we study the points around it. This is important if the points around that given function are of critical importance. So we need to know whether the limit exists or not. So to find whether the limit exists or not for a multivariable function, the limit will exist only when the limiting value is independent of the path along which z tends to z naught. The best way to do this for most problems is to consider the path y is equal to mx, which is a straight line path with slope equals to m. Since m can be any value, different values of m will give us different path. So let's say you find the limit of the function f of z by taking the path y equals to mx, and if the limiting value comes out to be m, then the limit does not exist. Since m is not unique, it can take any value. But sometimes we may have to use different paths, but in majority of our problems, we use our straight line path y equals to mx. Now let's say by finding the limit, you get an indeterminate form, that is, let's say, a 0 by 0 form. Now this does not mean that our limit does not exist. In this case, then we may have to change our way or use L'Hospital's rule. What is L'Hospital rule? If you are having limit z tends to z naught, phi 1 of z upon phi 2 of z, this it comes out to be 0 by 0. Then by using L'Hospital's rule, what you can do is this can be equal to limit z tends to z naught, phi 1 dash of z, that is differentiation of this one, divided by differentiation of this term, phi 2 dash of z. If you again get this as 0 by 0, you can again use L'Hospital rule, that is differentiation of this part divided by differentiation of this part, and so on. Second case, if we are having limit which goes z tends to infinity, then how do you solve this is, for these types of limits, we take the highest power out from the numerator and the denominator and then solve it. Now we will look into the continuity of a complex function. A continuous function, as the name suggests, is such that there are no abrupt changes in its value. So a graph which goes like this is continuous. A graph which goes like this is also continuous. But a graph which goes like this is discontinuous, and a graph which goes like this is also discontinuous. So a complex function f of z is said to be continuous at z equals to z naught if it satisfies two conditions. First, f of z should be defined at z naught. Second condition, limit z tends to z naught f of z is equal to f of z naught. And if we are having two functions f and g which are continuous at, let's say, at the point z naught, then the sum, the differentiation, the product, the division and the composition of these two functions is also continuous at the same point z naught. Now we will look into the differentiability of a complex function at, let's say, some point z naught. Now a function is differentiable means what? Its derivative exists for every input value of the function. Now a derivative means, a derivative is nothing but how much something is changing with respect to something at a particular point or instant, which is what? Instantaneous. And if this derivative exists at that point, then that derivative is the slope of the tangent line drawn on the graph at that point. So it will be like this. For real functions, we know if f dash of x is equal to limit h tends to 0, f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. For complex functions, f dash at point z naught, we are having limit delta z tends to 0, f of z naught plus delta z minus f of z naught divided by delta z. Thus, if this limiting value, let's say after solving this limit we get some value w. So if this limiting value is independent of the path taken from delta z to 0, then the limit exists. And if this limit exists, then f is differentiable at the point z naught. Also, any function f of z which contains only z raised to n terms, where n is a positive integer, like z raised to 1, z raised to 2, z raised to 3 and so on, then that function is always differentiable. But if we are having in the function, if we are having complex conjugate like z star or z bar or z star, then that function is not differentiable. In the next part, we'll begin with complex analytic functions. Till then, take care and peace be upon you.